This is DJ Slay Slay. Wiki 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 woo wiki woo wiki 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 woo wiki woo wiki woo woo. All right, someone left this box in here, so it's just like, man, I got to do something fabulous with it. Hello, Mr. Box. Hello, Mr. Slate. What's going on this week? Well, we got to prepare for our vocab quiz. Oh, yes, we do. All right, so what are we talking about this week? We've been talking about events leading to the Civil War and or causes of the Civil War. So let's begin. Okay, threw you off. You thought I was going to do that the whole entire time. I am not going to do that the whole entire time. Some of you might have really enjoyed that, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, so let's talk about some of these words. The first word is Missouri Compromise. The Missouri Compromise is written in 1820 by Henry Clay. Maine is going to come in as a free state. Missouri is going to come in as a slave state. And slavery is going to be outlawed north and west of the 3630 line. Okay, so that's the Missouri Compromise. The next word is the Compromise of 1850, just kind of keeping everything together. Compromise of 1850, California is going to come in as a free state. Popular sovereignty is going to be allowed in the rest of the territory that we got from New Mexico or from the Mexican secession. We have the Fugitive Slave Law, and then we also have they're going to ban slave trade in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, my brain's a little bit off on that one. But there you go. Compromise of 1850, also written by Henry Clay. Part of the Compromise of 1850 is the Fugitive Slave Law. And the Fugitive Slave Law says that any runaway slave can be captured, has to be captured. Northerners have to help by giving information. And then those people are returned to a life of slavery. Okay, 12 Years a Slave is a reference point for you. It's the second most popular book during this period of time. The Wilmot Proviso was a law that did get passed, but it was a discussion about outlawing slavery in any territory that we had won from New Mexico. I mean, from the Mexican-American War, I'm sorry. It doesn't pass, but it shows you that there's already tension, or there continues to be tension over the issue of slavery. Kansas-Nebraska Act, the idea is that they're going to take the territory, split it up into two, and allow popular sovereignty to decide whether or not there should be slavery there. Remember, this since where Kansas-Nebraska is, if you look on a map, that means that this undoes the Missouri Compromise, so the Kansas-Nebraska Act. We also, part of that is Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas is a reaction to allowing popular sovereignty in Kansas. So you get people who are extremely for slavery and people who are extremely against slavery, and they're supposed to be voting whether or not there's slavery or not. And so there's a lot of fighting and there's violence. And one of the people that also grows out of this is a guy by the name of John Brown. And John Brown is very much against slavery. And he actually takes over a ferry with weapons on it because he wants to give weapons to for slaves to rise up and to end slavery. And, okay, so that's Harper's Ferry. He ends up being put to death for his crime. But once again, it shows you the tensions, shows you that people are willing to commit violent acts over this issue. Okay, Kansas. Lincoln Douglas debates. Lincoln Douglas debates. Abraham Lincoln will go against Stephen Douglas in a senator's race. Abraham Lincoln loses, but he gets made very popular because Lincoln, on his view of slavery, Lincoln doesn't think slavery should expand. Stephen Douglas, who was an Illinois Democrat, said that popular sovereignty should decide whether or not slavery expands. And Lincoln's like, no, don't let it expand. Understand, though, he doesn't think he can get rid of slavery where it's already legal, okay? Based off what the Constitution says. Even though he was morally opposed to slavery, he said, I don't have the power to get rid of it. But see here, you see that something in Illinois, a senator's race, Lincoln loses the senator's race, but he becomes very popular, which is going to help make him be a candidate for the presidential election when we get around to 1860. Nat Turner's Rebellion, slave revolt led by Nat Turner. He rises up with a group of men. He kills off his slave-owning family in hopes to lead a rebellion where all the slaves will leave their plantations. and they can head south, and liberate all the slaves along the way. Unfortunately, this ends up very violent, and laws are going to be passed to prevent free African Americans and slaves from talking or meeting alone, and it also makes anti-slavery pamphlets written by abolitionists. It's going to make them illegal. Okay. The last thing we're talking about here today is there's two more I got. But let's talk Dred Scott v. Sanford. Dred Scott v. Sanford, the case here where Dred Scott, he's a slave who's taken to a free territory and then taken back to a territory or a state that had slavery. And when he's in this, he sues for his freedom. Dred Scott loses the case. The Supreme Court decides that Dred Scott is not a citizen. He cannot sue. And so this makes it where slavery is legal in all territories, basically by that Supreme Court decision. It also says that African Americans have no citizenship. They have no rights in the United States. So Dred Scott, that Supreme Court decision is going to have to be undone by an amendment. So we're going to see that during Reconstruction. So that's the Dred Scott case. So last word you have to know is Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin convinces Northerners that slavery is wrong, slavery is bad. Okay. Short story on this. I've only read bits and snippets, so I'm going to be totally truthful with you. I've not read all of Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was written by an abolitionist lady by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe. And she's upset by the Compromise of 1850, specifically the piece about the Fugitive Slave Act. And so she writes a story of a guy by the name of Uncle Tom. And all Uncle Tom does is tries to make people happy. And Uncle Tom ends up with a very angry slave owner who actually ends up beating Uncle Tom to death. Sorry to ruin the book for you. Spoiler alert. The sub story of this, or the subplot of this, is a young lady, a young African American lady. I believe her name is Eliza, and it's her escaping on the Underground Railroad to get north while she has a baby. So Harriet Beecher Stowe is really intelligent when she writes these books because she uses universal characters of people that we think are very valuable and important to our society, and people that should be, protected. So an older gentleman, a young lady with a baby. So these things. So the book has such a large impact that when the war starts, Abraham Lincoln is actually, I guess he's hosting some kind of party or something at the White House, and Harriet Beecher Stowe shows up. And when Abraham Lincoln meets Harriet Beecher Stowe, he's famous for saying to her, "So you're the little lady that started the big war." All right, so those are the causes of the Civil War. I wish you well on this quiz, and I know you're going to do fabulous. If you like it, like it. If you loved it, subscribe, comment, say something positive. It would be great. I love hearing the feedback, especially from some of my former students. It's great that you're all doing well. Ladies and gentlemen, do not forget, into the wind. Woo! Have a good one. Thank you.